You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 9 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can. Whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to up your game to the next level. I am Sarah.
And I'm Rob. We have really no new updates, but I'll go over the updates we do have anyways.
Yeah.
So Patreon is live. We thank our Patreon members, and we will thank them again and again and again. The only issue that we're having right now is our Patreon bot's being a little bit of an idiot. I don't think its AI is as good as we thought it was going to be, so
Rob
we're going to
straight
get that
up
fixed.
going to punch a robot.
I'm going to punch a robot tomorrow. Also, a minor update on our Listen Live. We have no update. So we believe that the process is still being worked on. Our current engineering staff has assured us that they are working diligently with the other party members on this. Unfortunately, the beast is a bit bigger than they expected, and there are some other side delays that are occurring. Yeah, that's kind of what we've got for updates. I really don't have any other updates other than the fact that we'll get to that at the end of the show.
Yep. In the meantime, though, you can still listen to us live using the Podcast Detroit app.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That's available on both the iTunes App Store and the Android Google Play Store.
Yep. So if you're listening to us now, thank you. Yep. So last week, we kind of got into the discussion about etiquette and said we were going to go into this, and we got some really great questions from people, which were actually spot on to kind of where we were going with this.
Absolutely.
And then we kind of started chewing on it a little bit, and I did some digging to see, because I guess for me, like, it's come second nature. So it was really hard for me to start thinking about etiquette, because I'm like, how much of this is etiquette and how much of this is just me knowing my friends? And as I started going through it, I'm like, because it is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We've become second, we've become rote, almost hearth knowledge between us. And because we do game with now a number of storytellers, because we've been gaming that long, a lot of that carries. We just kind of know certain rules and certain house rules, and there's a certain level of respect, and we become good friends to come to that level. So breaking it down into something that's digestible for new people, I think, is a really good idea, and I think it was really kind of challenging, but we found some good resources.
Well, I think even for people who are, experienced storytellers and stuff like that, I think it's still a good discussion to have, because, I mean, what have we decided? I've been storytelling for about 25 years or so, and even still, I mean, I'm still thinking of some of these issues that we discussed.
And you miss sight of them, because we don't do this for a living.
Sure.
And I think even if you did, you would still miss things.
You take certain things for granted,
right.
And
we all have our shortcums at times, especially just because of how we're doing that given day.
You get kind of tunnel visioned on telling your story. You don't, you stop kind of seeing the players in front of you at a certain point sometimes.
Yeah.
And, so there, I think there's a lot everybody can learn about a good, healthy discussion of tabletop etiquette. And, what are kind of the mechanics that we work with outside of the group, the meta of being a group of people sitting at a table, regardless of what game you're playing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that kind of actually, I'm going to tip this off a little funny. I'm going to throw you a little bit on this one.
Okay.
One of the players that we've got, actually, who was, one of our listeners who was a guest, Overwatch, had the question of, how do you introduce the idea of table etiquette to new players? Besides this podcast.
Listen to episode 9 of the Storyteller Conclave podcast.
Yeah. Is there a session where you go over the basics, or these unwritten rules that are only spoken if they're broken? First off, it's a great rhyme. Fantastic work. But honestly, I think that was the one that kind of caught me. I'm like, how do we talk about this?
Oh, it absolutely was. That one was one that really kind of sucker punched me, because it was something I never really thought about. Like you said, this is all kind of hearth knowledge for us.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for so long that we kind of take all this for granted that, you think, well, how does a new player know how to act in a role-playing game?
And we're not talking act.
No.
in the role-playing
I mean,
sense.
like, how do you act when you're invited to a gaming group?
Right.
You
Or
know?
if
What sort of behavior are you looking for?
if you're not and I'm going to say this because we find this a lot. If you're not a social person who goes to parties or hangs out at other people's homes, you meet people at, a coffee shop or you meet somebody at a bar. Those etiquette conditions are very different than being at someone's home or being at a role-playing center like a game shop or something like that. So you've kind of got to, I don't know, have a roadmap. I know I've been to 2 gaming centers now where like RIW has it, and I don't think the other place that I was thinking of had it, but there used to be a place out, I want to say, on the east side that both had a board. Now, granted, some of them were comical kind of etiquette things, but most of them were there were things I could easily remember, like don't be a dick,
Sure.
check your ego at the door, things like that. But they were good things to have for any game you're gaming, whether it was Warhammer, whether it was role playing. So some hobby centers have those types of things, don't bring drinks into this area, or if you do, make sure it has a lid, so that you don't spill it everywhere, things like that. But there are so many other little pieces of etiquette that we miss. So I think it's great that we're doing this, that we're going to try and break this down. And, I like, when you did the show sheet, you kind of categorized it to new for player and started with that, because I think that is the most important place to start.
Yep.
So, you want to hit the list, I guess? So we start from the top? Okay.
All right. So these are all these tips we're about to go over are geared towards our new players.
And no particular order. And we'll break down.
Absolutely no particular order.
Yeah.
So some quick advice for new players. First off, one of the things that everybody kind of struggles with at first is the distinction between in character and out of character,
or meta, as some people call it.
And the quote that I love to hear is, "I will never be mad at you for anything that happens on graph paper," meaning, of course, that like, if Galstaff, the sorcerer of light, is yelling at you and telling you that you're a fool for invoking that demon,
right,
you need to understand that, Bob, the guy who's playing Galstaff, is not mad at you.
Right.
Like, Galstaff has every reason to be mad at Marisol.
Right.
For being a jerk. But, Bob's not mad at Sarah.
Right. And same goes for pretty much any other game where you've got a level of conflict. If someone in a setting even like Urban Shadows, which is a very much a social game where you're creating a conflict and trying to find resolution, those games create heated conflict. It's being able to recognize that distance, that little bit of distance of saying this is character, and being able to look at the person and know that you're just doing this in character.
Absolutely. And in what we've said before too, I believe in previous episodes, may have even been last episode, is,
probably,
if you ever do have a doubt about the distinction between that, if you ever think that line is being crossed and you're uncertain, you think that person's maybe getting a little heated, just take a moment, step back and say, "Hey, this is just my character. Are we cool? This is all in character, right?" And just wait for that person to say, "Oh yeah, no, we're good. I understand you're not really mad at me. It's your character. Okay, good." And then you can run right back into it. But it's always good, if you have any doubt, always check, because it's better to just take that moment and check and break the flow of the scene for 3 seconds, rather than, potentially having an escalated situation.
Totally. Yeah. And this goes in with some of the things we've got, and we'll move through these and get a little bit more feeling, because we're not going to get to conflict and things like that. But I think in the flow of being in character is try and stay in character when you're your character. We're always prone to making our characters, or a lot of us are prone to making our characters, our initial characters, different versions of ourselves, a better image, or the ultimate image of yourself.
That's a fantasy game. We all want to be cool.
Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your character knows what you know, or your character is you in just a different time period. It's not like you literally got transported at a time and suddenly your beliefs on women's rights and justice apply to your character, who has this wonderful background of slavery, like where you were a slave owner. Obviously, there's going to be some differences there. So you have to remember that your character has a background, has a history through the game, try and stick with that. Mouse Guard does a good job of tying some of the pieces of history and background into your character sheet, so you're staring at them constantly.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think that's a good thing to do. And in something like D&D, you don't necessarily get that reinforcement except for in background. A little bit like, oh, I'm a soldier. Great,
yeah,
I have that
it's
as
a little
background.
more codified now in 5th edition, I think, than it was in previous editions.
Oh,
because your
totally.
background actually does give you a benefit. So
it does, but
does
it's not
incentivize you leaning into it a little bit.
Yeah, but it's not explicit on your sheet way of helping you get into character. So I think one of the things, like some of the other systems which are definitely more social and I will say role-playing forward, like Vampire, make sure that nature and demeanor are on the sheet. 7th Sea uses her hubris and virtues right on the sheet. So when you look at it, you're like, my character is reckless. And the word reckless is right on there. So your mind's already moving to that. So use those types of things to help you stay in that character position.
Right.
Encourage that as a storyteller, like, hey, your character's a little reckless, isn't they? Oh yeah, I guess they are. And then use that to stay in character.
But everything, I guess the moral of the story is everything you do is going to be better if you're in character than just describing your character from an out standpoint.
Exactly.
You can say, well, my character turns to Rob and says, what are we going to do about this?
That
or
sounds terrible.
You can put on a voice and say, what are we going to do about this? Well,
and now they
suddenly,
know you're in character.
It's already a little bit more dramatic than
Right.
me just saying, okay, well, that's what I ask him,
Yeah.
And I would say don't be afraid to perform a little bit.
Right.
You're only going to enhance the situation.
Yep.
I think even the ham-fisted attempts I've seen by new players to, do a voice or, act something out or something like that. Even if it was a little goofy and awkward at the time, it was still good.
Always.
It was still a good effort, and we were all able to kind of laugh about it. Okay, maybe it was a little awkward, but hey, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun, and it enhanced the scene.
Yeah. Lead into it if you can. Like,
Yeah.
you get a D20 roll and it rolls a natural 20, lean into the role play a little bit.
Yeah.
Let that ride, that good energy ride a little bit.
And plus, just like anything in life, you're only going to get better at it by practice.
Always.
So the sooner you start acting your character out and getting into your character and staying in your character, the more second nature that's going to become for you. And it's going to be a better game for everybody around you.
Yeah. I think the next ones that we're sliding into are more the ones that we don't think about, that we try to think about, or we just, because we've been doing it so long. Like, one of the ones that came up time and time again when I was looking at the list is ask questions. Like, players are always afraid to ask questions. They feel like they're dumb. Like, maybe they should have read more. Like, I don't know about you, but like 9 times out of 10 when I look at a rule book, even after all these years, I have to look 4 or 5 times to find something.
Yeah.
And it's just the way the systems are written, and they're written in the best way they can be. In some cases, they are not written in the best way they could be. They're written in a story narrative, even in the book.
And they're cross-referenced where you might read 80% of the rules you need to know about it on page 57, but back in Appendix B, there's this other rule that is very impactful.
Oh God, the whole
invisibility. Invisibility.
Oh my God, that was when so there was this great. I'm just going to take a small tangent on this one. There was a great video that Sarah, an artist that Sarah sent me to, that's on YouTube, who does spells. It's the animated spell book. It is fantastic.
Animated spell book by Z Bash. I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, I highly recommend watching it as a player. I highly not recommend watching it as a storyteller to players, because as a player you will amazingly start screwing up your GMs.
Nobody expects a backpack wizard.
Oh man, the backpack wizard. But the invisibility one was a perfect teardown of how misplaced or oddly placed caveats are throughout the book. And so there's nobody expected to know that information. That's kind of what I'm getting at in this. So as a player, don't be afraid to ask questions. In all honesty, if you ask a question in a game and you get sloughed off by another player, that's bad etiquette on their part.
Right.
If someone's
that's
asking
not
a question
your
in
fault
game,
for asking the question.
Nobody knows these things. So be kind to people who ask questions. Take the time. Okay, to help educate them and not be a know-it-all about it, or like, well, it's over here, or can't you see that on your sheet, or blah blah blah. Nobody. The first time looking at these sheets, it's literally like you've just stepped into an arena. You have a toothpick, and there's guys here shooting arrows at you. You've got no idea what you're doing. You're lost.
I mean, first off, we were all new once. Second off, not everybody learns at the same rate.
I was born
too.
with a D20 in my hand.
Right.
Actually, I was probably born with a D4 shoved in my foot, but
we all don't learn in the same ways either.
Right.
And there are some people who, because of whatever circumstances, may need a rule repeated for them 3, 4, 5 times. Just because there's a lot going on. It's new. And it's all very scary and intimidating, and your turn only lasts so long, and then there's a bunch of other people doing a bunch of goofy things. Don't be afraid to ask. Even if it's the second or third time, we were all new ones.
Exactly. I think the next one applies to what I've just been doing.
Hogging the spotlight?
You got it.
So that's another one for you. And there are some of us who do like to jump into the limelight, and do like to have everything be the us show, and we're gonna talk about how we're gonna we swing our sword and we cut down that goblin and we do this and we do that, and then 4 other players are sitting at your table going, okay.
Exactly.
I'm
gonna file my nails over here.
I
wait for you.
gotta leave in 3 hours. Can we wrap this up?
Yeah. Exactly.
So just remember, it's a group game, and it's always better when everybody gets a little bit of the spotlight.
Exactly.
Sharing the spotlight is one of the best things you can do because you get a story told to you for free that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And lots of other players have lots of great input, and it's the interplay between the characters that's going to make it a lot more entertaining than anything that just comes out of your mouth alone.
Yeah. And as a storyteller, don't be pure exposition. Like, that's great if there's a giant epic battle happening in front of them that you want to be able to show that this is what's happening to the world. It is meaningless if your players are just sitting there with popcorn going, this is pointless. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, they're watching a movie.
Yeah.
They're watching you describe a movie, which is even worse.
Yeah.
Because they don't even get ILM.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, all right. Feedback. Feedback is important. Oh, wait. We
skipped one.
I missed one. See, right there.
And that is listening.
Yes.
Not all players have big voices.
That is true.
So you've got a lot of people at your table. A lot of people will be vying for that spotlight. As a storyteller and as a player, make sure that you understand that some players at your table are not going to be as assertive. They're not going to be as outgoing. They may not just even be as vocally loud.
Right.
And some people may be sitting there in the corner going, can I? And after the third time, they're not going to try anymore.
Yep.
And they're not going to have any fun because they didn't get to do the thing that they are.
And then you're going to be upset that they're not playing.
Exactly.
They're doing something else.
Exactly. And they're going to get bored. They're going to drift off, and they're going to be the person playing Bejeweled on their phone.
Exactly. Which hurts all of us as storytellers when you see something like that because you know something's wrong. You're not sure what it is, and you get frustrated with it.
Yep, absolutely. So make sure that you allow everybody at your table, regardless of their particular level of input, to have some input. Ask for and accept feedback.
I love this part.
And this is players and storytellers.
Yes.
Absolutely. Everybody. And I think this is just good life advice, honestly.
Totally.
Ask for and accept feedback.
And remember, people give feedback in different ways, but you have to remember that when they're giving you that feedback, it's their first response. Sometimes they're not going to be that great at communicating that feedback. Listen for the important parts of it. Listen to and try and repeat it back to them so that you're getting what they're saying. And don't take it personally. Understand that we're all learning and growing on this.
And if you're giving feedback, make it constructive
and respectful.
Like, wow, your character really sucks is not good feedback.
No.
But I'm sensing that your character is a very greedy person, and I'm worried that that's going to lead to some inter-party conflict, which is not something that I'm really terribly down for.
Right.
Can we just make sure that as you're playing out the greedy aspects of your character, that you're not filching from the party?
Right.
As that would diminish my fun directly. Like,
right.
Oh, okay, I think that's good feedback.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely have conflict when you steal from, the guards in town and I catch you doing it.
Right.
And, put you to the wall and say, don't ever steal from those people. And you look at me and say, well, who's acceptable then? Because you just robbed those goblins. So let's get together make a line of demarcation here.
Don't ever steal from happy people.
There you go. So, okay, so then the other stuff I think kind of falls into things that that are usually in the rules, like bring dice, bring pens, bring miniature if you can.
If you can.
Yeah.
If you can. Okay, and this is with another understanding, and we're gonna address accessibility a little bit later.
Yes.
Because not everybody has the same levels of accessibility, and that is
Right.
definitely a conversation we should have.
Right.
But if it is within your means to do so,
Mm-hmm.
bring your own dice.
Yeah.
Bring your own pencil or whatever. Bring your own digital device if you're playing on like D&D Beyond or another, digital medium or something like that. Don't show up to a role-playing game and go, "Oh, guys, hey, can I borrow dice?" Because I'll tell you what, after the third time, that gets really old.
It does. But especially if you're, you say that every game and everybody knows you have a sack of dice at home, or, you just keep forgetting to bring your character sheet. You take it home every time and everybody says leave it. And you're like, "Oh, I forgot it again. Can you print me a new one?" Or "I don't remember my character, so I'm just going to write some stats down." Those kind of pieces make it seem like you don't care about the story.
Exactly. Now, I am never, ever going to deny someone borrowing dice if they're like, "I'm living paycheck to paycheck and this is my fourth D&D game. I know, but I keep meaning to buy some." No, hey, say no more.
Totally different story.
Say no more. This is a completely different story. Here's some dice.
Yeah.
We all have we all have some to spare.
Yep.
In fact, here's a bunch of my old ones.
Yeah. Now, this was me. If you have the means and you're bringing someone into the fold, I think some of the unwritten etiquette of bringing someone new, if you're adding a player to a game that you're part of, or you're a storyteller bringing someone new in and you have that, remember the standard things. You can get them a first set of dice. That's not that expensive. You can find them for like under $10. And a bottle of Crown Royal has a nice bag that comes with it. And it's a great gift. So, and if you're not drinking, that bag is still acceptable.
Man, and that is tradition.
That is tradition.
You are inaugurating them into a long and amazing tradition of gamers using Crown Royal bags as dice
That's
bags.
That's right. That's a good start point, and they have to have their own. You can't just give them a used dice bag.
Exactly.
It's already got magic in it, or it's already been destroyed. You never know. So
right. I think the Crown Royal bag and the gazebo story are just the two main things you need to bring everybody into D&D, and that's it.
Yeah. Or if there were any girls there, that one too.
Where are the Cheetos?
Alewives. Why?
A Dead Alewives Watchtower.
There you go. Yeah, talk about age. All right, we'll get to those later. So let's move on from then the player aspects, and kind of shift into etiquette as a whole.
Yes.
Now, when I look at this, the first thing I think of is house etiquette, and I think that is the biggest thing. Like, where are you playing? Are you in a space that someone is providing? Meaning, is it one of your friends? Maybe not even the storyteller who is saying, this house is the central house, or this is the basement, or it's we're playing at my house, which I live with my parents and I'm in the basement. That's how we almost all started.
Yep.
And you've got to treat that space with respect.
Well, heck, even for a hot second, my boyfriend and I were playing at one of the local game stores.
Exactly. Or even a library. There's a lot of libraries that often space.
Yep.
I mean, one of the coolest spaces that I've always wanted to play in is you can get a room at the U of M Law Quad in their library.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's a choice location because in the Law Quad library, there is a Starbucks that's only for the Law Quad library. And that says a lot right there on its own.
We go bankrupt so quick.
I know. But those spaces, regardless of, where on the scale they sit, are amazing spaces that you're being given rights to. And you have to treat that with a level of respect and honor and almost ritual of make sure you don't leave it worse than you find it. Treat the host with respect with what you're bringing. Don't bring a bunch of stuff that's going to create a mess. Don't create a mess. Don't assume it's your place that you own, no matter how many times you've played there.
Don't just raid the fridge without asking.
Exactly.
If there is, going to be refreshments, don't put all that burden on the host. If it is within your means to do so, offer to maybe bring some snacks or something.
Yeah. And some people live in apartments or condos where they're attached to other groups that noise violations occur at certain times. If you guys are playing late, remember that. You can get excited in a quiet way. And still kind of push those things out, but you've got to be respectful of the space and the host. And likewise, the guests within that space. Those people are coming to you. You have to create a certain thing. I don't think you have to go all out and do anything because you are offering the space. But at the same time, make sure it's clean and acceptable and ready and playable for the players, accessible for them to take. Because obviously sitting around on couches is good for certain games, but for a D&D game where you have miniatures and a table space, you need a physical space to be able to set that stuff up.
And I'm gonna add one thing in here that isn't on our show notes to the whole being respectful to the host and respectful to the other players.
Yep.
Shower.
Oh, please.
Please, you are going to be in close proximity to other people for possibly 6-8 hours, going by average times and such like that.
I'm with you. We were at Gen Con with a bunch of us, and by the third day, the scent was palpable.
Sacrifice personal hygiene for 3 black mana.
Exactly. It was terrible. But and I think the best comment was made by a cosplayer who said, if you can afford the $60 ticket and the $100 room,
you can afford soap.
You can afford soap in 5 minutes of your time.
Yep.
I mean, it's the little things that make a huge difference. But please.
Kate's over here just nodding. She's like, I am on board with us.
Yeah, she's had this moment.
I've been locked in small rooms with non-deodorant wearers for long periods of time.
I'm not saying this room is very big.
You have our sympathies. Rip in peace.
Yeah, I can't say we've come into this small room, which has very little airflow and smelt certain things. We're just going to leave that there. This isn't an ASMR video describing scents, so we're going to step right away from that. Yeah. That phase, Kate, I get that one. So
just the flashbacks.
Yeah, we're sorry. We should bring a candle next time.
Okay. So there's treating everybody on that personal level of respect, but there's also a an emotional and social level of respect as well.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Don't bring fights into other people's houses and stuff like that. When you show up at the D&D table, if you've got some beef with another person, resolve it out of game, because there are potentially 4 to 6 other people sitting at the table with you that, it's their time. Mm-hmm. It's their game. Yeah. Everybody's there to have fun. This is not the time to be working out who, cheated on who with who, or who left the toilet seat up, or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah, who put the toilet paper on wrong. So don't break that. You're friends at that table. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not friends outside, you don't connect with this person other than on the game days, which I've been in multiple games where that's been the case. When you're at that table, you're all friends. So don't create discord in that situation. Not in the fact that Discord, our communication.
No, we love all you on Discord. Thank you.
Yeah, especially the ones who are listening right now.
We just don't like Discord.
Yes. The actual there's other meanings of the word. So let's go with that. And kind of tied into that is, kind of tied into that is don't do dick moves. Don't deliberately sabotage the story. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes from an angle of how you're feeling and maybe feeling about the group, or just who you are in general as that character. I'm going to create a saboteur kind of character. No, that's not where most role playing comes from.
You get a lot of these people who want to, I'm going to be the thief and I'm going to steal from everybody in the group. Or, the king is giving us this mystical quest and he's handing us a magical sword and we're supposed to go and save his daughter, the princess, or something like that. But, I'm feeling kind of random, so I'm just going to stab the king. Why? Why are you going to stab the king? Because, I feel like it. Lol, I'm random. That's, just, if you're doing your active best to just be derailing the story, first off, the storyteller worked very hard on that story. Lean into it a little bit. You're probably going to have a lot more fun than whatever chaos you think you're spreading there. Second off, some people, and this is a point that I will come back to, some people really only have those 4 hours or whatever per maybe multiple months to sit down and play that game. Because of work, because of family obligations, because of, having children or whatever. But you may show up to that game thinking this is just, hey, whatever, this is just my fun time. I'm just going to goof around because, hey, what does it matter? It's just D&D. To some other people, that may be very impactful. And if you are ruining their time, then you're having a lot more impact than you really think.
Yeah. I've seen cases like, I was involved in a game where people were showing up late, or people would have an issue with being able to get there on time, and we had a time constraint. And once we started playing, it felt like they weren't being very respectful of the space or the time that we were there, the scheduled event. And it was once a month. So it was very grinding on me to try and get into story and have to deal with the interactions of the other players who were just not really being there. They were not in it. And there were other things going on as well, and I'll kind of get to some of those other points as far as etiquette was concerned, and bring this back. But be respectful of those times. And I think, Sarah, you did say it perfectly with that. It might be the only time they can. And I'm sorry, I was a little disconnected there for a little while, folks. I got a bad message. But I'm doing okay. You had brought up, like, if a person has kids and it's the only time that they can game, I think that's you have to be mindful as a storyteller to help them and keep the game focused for their purposes as well.
Absolutely. And, being respectful of other people's time kind of comes down to a couple other things too. Some people may not be able to play for several hours without a break.
Yeah, physically,
like sitting in a chair, concentrating on a thing, it may actually be out of scope for some people.
I mean, I have one of our dear friends actually has scoliosis in her back, and she can't sit like that for that long.
Yep, absolutely.
So I totally respect, just maybe she has to get up, but at the same time, we have to be aware of those break points. Some people have medication issues.
Sure, absolutely. Don't be afraid to take breaks. We in our game sessions usually run about 8 hours. And roughly about halfway through, maybe a little earlier, we always have at least a half-hour break where we just get up and we get lunch, or dinner, or whatever it is at that point. And
totally,
there's probably about a good hour where we just spend out of character, just chilling, eating, everybody taking care of whatever needs they need. And then let's
right back into it.
Let's get right back in. Yeah.
And I think kind of staying within that same respect level when we move into like people having distractions that are there, like. A lot of times technology is involved. I mean, we all have, our personal devices, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a tablet.
Kids these days, Am I right?
No, it's adults. It's 100% adults.
It's absolutely adults.
So trying to keep those to a minimum is a huge thing because we are attached in a lot of different ways. And in that vein, a lot of information is coming at us and is very accessible to us. So times you'll be sitting there in the game and you might recognize something from, I don't know, maybe like a meme that you once saw, and you want to pull it up and show it to somebody else because it's really funny. Yeah, that's okay, but at the same time, how distracting is that for you to not be involved in the game at that point? Now you're distracted from the game and you have to catch back up, and that's grinding as a storyteller.
I mean, it's even happened with me as a storyteller, and I consider myself a pretty serious storyteller.
Yeah.
Like, I want my game to run very business-like almost, and even I'm just like, I'm sorry, that's cracking me up for a reason you probably don't know. Remind me to show you the YouTube video later.
Right.
And I just, that's it.
Yep.
Just, when we hit our break, then I'll be like, oh my God, Rob, I got to show you that thing that cracked me up earlier, and you'll understand why what just came out of Thalian's mouth was so funny.
Yep. And it's not to say that you're not going to have that table chatter, but remember that the more you encourage it, either as a storyteller or as a player, the more you're dragged away from what you're there doing. So,
And I mean, more from even just, obviously it's disrespectful to other people's time, because it may be limited for them, but even just on down to, it breaks up scenes.
Oh, totally.
I mean, if you're there playing, I mean, if you're playing like a goofy game and you're just there to, kind of, hey, everybody's going to goof around and whatever, we're going to play some D&D, we're going to dungeon crawl,
right.
I'm whiz bang the sorcerer, haha, whatever. Yeah. That's fine. Everybody has those games. Those games have their time, their place, and whatnot. And your fun is your fun.
Right.
Your fun is not wrong. If that's how you're doing it, then absolutely, let the table chatter loose.
Yeah.
Have a great time. But if you are trying to play a serious game, and there are certain games that really kind of depend on their flow and their mood,
right?
Like, Vampire the Masquerade comes to mind immediately. Dread.
Dread is
dude, don't joke around during my game of Dread. We're here to experience horror. And terror, and right in the name, Dread.
Unless it's Josh Whedon's Dread, and then there's that chance can be totally thrown out.
Right.
Like, yeah. But I think going along with that is like I'll use the term substances, but not in the negative sense. Like a lot of people tend to drink while gaming or podcasting. Apparently, that's a thing. But I think the whole idea of getting drunk or getting intoxicated pulls away from the story and pulls away from knowing where you're at. I mean, I can see that when people go too far and get inebriated in any substance, you're not really putting yourself into the story, and you might be like, oh, what was going on? And at that point, you've pulled away. You're not there anymore.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's a time and a place thing. Yeah. Some people are going to have gaming groups that are just, bring your own 6-pack of beer. Yep. And we're just going to have a goofy old time that's totally not serious and have a couple laughs and play some D&D and whatever. And that's fine. But it needs to be established that that's the culture of your gaming group.
Right. And set those boundaries. Mm-hmm. I mean, if somebody there is going to be a serious gamer and the other person's going to be I'll use the term lightly, complete piss off and going to drink the whole time, if everybody knows that that's the way it's going to be in your game, fine. But if you don't talk about it and you don't set those realities, you could really have some hurt people who aren't going to enjoy themselves and are going to end up walking away.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally would not enjoy this style game.
No.
And I would be one of those people who God, I showed up and everybody was drunk.
Yeah.
Also keep in mind, and this is one of those other places. It's respectful of the person's home and the person's rules and such like that. But as certain other substances become legalized throughout the nation and such like that, just like our own state of Michigan here.
Yeah.
Drinking may be perfectly acceptable. Weed may not.
Right. I mean, I'll flat out say it. I work for a national company because it's not a federally recognized thing. Mm-hmm. I can't even have it in my house.
Yep.
Because if I get checked, I get screwed out of it. So you have to be – those kind of rules need to be established. Even though I host a lot of games at my place that I don't run. In fact, I host your game.
Yep.
Because we're a good central location. We got the space for it. That's a deadline for me. I've got to draw that one in the sand.
Yep, absolutely.
So I have no problem with the substance. Believe me, it'd probably be great if I could have some. But you know what? I like my job too.
Yeah,
I like an income.
Absolutely.
So
we talked a lot about player etiquette.
Yeah, I think we need to push into storyteller.
I think there's definitely a couple points for storyteller etiquette here.
As much as we talk about spotlighting from a player perspective, we also want to make sure that we're highlighting it from a storyteller's perspective. It is easy to attach to players in a scene who might be involved, a social character in a social scene, or a combat character in a combat scene. But it's important that you remember that it's a group that you're working with. Don't favor one over others, even if it is their scene particularly. And sometimes you want to make sure that you're focusing on other people during those scenes. That person's going to do just fine. I assure you. They're going to roll the dice. They're going to know where they're going. Things are going to be fantastic for them. But there's probably other players at the table who probably should be part of that scene. Just because they don't necessarily have it. Like in the case on your D&D game of putting combat people into a social situation, you flipped it around and it was perfect. So watch that favoritism. I'm going to kind of cut it short there only because we kind of went over this before, but
sure.
Yeah.
And keep in mind too, this kind of extends to yourself as well, as far as the spotlight goes. We as storytellers sometimes lean into our exposition and we want to spend a lot of time describing the scene and this is going on and that's going on. And we've got this big, grand, epic vision of how things are happening in our head. But like I said earlier, that's describing a movie to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Neil Stephenson and you're writing a book about the internet and you spend 6 pages describing a room, that's great because it's in-depth and beautiful. But you've just lost all the players at your table.
Yep. So don't be afraid to share your own spotlight with your players and let them interact a little bit.
We talked about being conscious of your timid players, the ones who are quiet, the ones who don't normally step forward. And that might be as simple as watching them, trying to figure out who's who at your team, and helping pull them a little bit. Focus on them. Somebody may try and talk over them, but you have to remember that their voice is important too.
Absolutely. And one thing that I like to do is I will go out of my way to interact with those characters
And players.
and because I think what you'll find is, especially with new players, specifically like in my boyfriend's group, one of our players is she is that quiet player, but I think she's got a very, very compelling character. And so my character will go out of her way to strike up conversation with her. And, just as a player, if left to her own devices, she's going to be that person who just kind of is quiet and says, "Oh, I like your plan." Okay. You didn't have any input? Nope.
Yep.
No, we're just going to go into the dungeon. Okay. I'll blow stuff up when I get there. I'm playing a wizard.
Yeah.
But my character, will be like, "Lady Nightbreeze, I want your input on this because you are a noble elf and your culture isn't one that I know a lot about. Can we have a conversation about this?" And suddenly you see her come out of her shell a little bit, and I really like that. I like giving those quieter players their chance to shine, because not only does it show that they're welcome in your gaming group from an out of character standpoint,
right,
but sometimes you'll be really surprised very pleasantly by some of the things that they're going to bring to the table when just given a chance and a prompt.
Yeah, I mean, it's recognizing what they want to play and how they want to play, and also just pushing interaction with them a little bit, giving them that opening.
Letting them know they're not forgotten at the table.
We had talked earlier about special needs and accessibility. Be aware of these things. We kind of talked about it with when we were talking how to be a storyteller, I think in like episode 1 and 2. We talked about like recognizing players' needs, recognizing, whether it's just sound, whether they can't hear well, whether they don't speak very loud, whether they need a special place. Maybe they can't physically sit a certain way and they need to have like a prop to help them, put their arm on or something like that. Give them that accessibility, but accessibility also extends to financial accessibility, I think. And I think that's a lost moment in our minds a little bit because we all have jobs, or at least some of us do. And that financial burden on a new game can be hard. I mean, I don't know about you, but how many versions of D&D have we gone through?
Enough.
Yeah.
More than enough.
And it's $60 to $80 a book sometimes.
Yeah.
Plus all the errata and everything else that goes with it. You're like, geez, how many monster manuals do I need to own? Honestly. So.
And that's one of the reasons I've mentioned like WRNM multiple times.
Yeah.
And one of the huge reasons I love that game system so much is because it's free.
Yeah.
You can go download the PDF right now.
Yep.
And that makes it extremely accessible to people. Yep. You don't even need an internet connection. I will print it out for you.
Right.
And hand it to you, and we will learn it in an afternoon.
Yep. And I think we'll eventually, I'm going to hold this off the rest of this discussion because I think one of the things that we can do is talk about system costs.
Oh yeah.
I think that
buy-in.
Yeah. So let's can that one, shelve it maybe till
on a scale of 1 to Warhammer 40K. How expensive is this game?
I think we have a topic coming up soon. Right. All right. But I think one of the things I want to hit before we run out of time, because we do have a couple questions I want to make sure we went over, that we kind of set to the side, was adjudicating player issues.
Right.
And I think there's two sides to this. There's the one side, which is I'm a player and I disagree with the storyteller. I have I'm a player, I'm disagreeing with what another player can do or not do. And I think those can be two different issues. Like we talked at at dinner actually about the DM being always right. It's in almost every book, every manual, you see the same thing that, the DM is always right.
Rule number 1, the DM is always right. Rule number 2, if the DM is wrong, see rule number 1.
Exactly. But there are times when the DM is new to the system and maybe one of the players knows a little bit more.
Heck, maybe they're old hat at the system. They're just remembering something wrong. I get checked on rules all the time.
I mean, everything changes between first, second, third, fourth, 4.5, 4.57, 5, whatever.
Yep.
So there are going to be times that we run into issues. And so I think one of the things you can do as a player from an etiquette standpoint is accept what the DM is saying, but give them the information they need to do it better after.
Yes.
If it's not a whole scene breaking moment, your character just died because of a mistake, maybe give them the benefit of rule number 1, and then after the game be like, hey, here's where that rule sits. Here's the text behind it.
Right. So there's two things going on there. First off, if you check me on my rules in the middle of a game, there's a certain seat of authority that I'm sitting in as the storyteller. Okay.
Right.
My seat of authority is to basically be the judge, jury, and executioner if need be within the scope of that story.
Right.
And my job is to keep the story running. It sounds really arrogant. It sounds really like, well, I'm a big and mighty storyteller and you're just a little peon player. But to a certain extent, that's kind of how it is.
But I think,
but that's mostly, again, just to keep the story running. Someone has to be the final say on the rules and how the game is adjudicated.
Exactly.
And that's the storyteller.
Yes.
So it's not an arrogance thing. It's just literally somebody has to umpire the game.
Right. Exactly. And then it can move forward.
If you're checking me on rules and in front of everybody else kind of being like, well, no, you're wrong. No, you don't know how to play this game. Suddenly my whole authority as the storyteller starts being called into question. And that can cause a lot of disruption.
Right.
Secondly, though, the storyteller may have a lot of good reasons for why they're ruling the way that they are,
There are things going on behind that screen you don't know about.
Exactly. And it may just be that they're adjudicating a rule due to a set of extenuating circumstances. It says on on page 147 that, it's just you don't have to roll to hit. You just make an athletics check. Well, okay, well, I made them roll to hit because in the last turn they took 43 points of damage from an ogre throwing a rock at their head. And I wanted to see if they were too dazed to pull the move off. Oh. Okay. Right. But I didn't want to break the flow of the game to explain that to you.
Right.
So just make the damn attack roll.
Right. Right. Or I want, you were dodging out of combat and you had uncanny dodge, yet I made you roll to see if you could make an athletics check. There was no necessary check for it. Well, why'd you do that? Well, there was a sniper on a rooftop who has the ability to shoot you at will. I wanted to see what your athletics roll would be so I could combat that roll. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I wasn't going to tell you that there was a hidden sniper.
Correct.
Right.
So, because you guys never checked that building and never cleared it. But again, communication is key, and be sympathetic and empathetic of everything that's going on. I know that's hard to do when you're in the heat of a moment, and for some people, it's really challenging to not get your point across. I run into this all the time. Like if the communication is breaking down, but one of the best things you can do is just take a moment and take a breath and be sympathetic and say, okay, let's move on. If it's more than 5 minutes, move on.
One of the best questions I think you can ask in a situation like that where you do have interplayer conflict is, what do you think should be happening right now? What are you expecting out of this interaction that you're not getting?
Right.
Because I think a lot of the conflicts that come up, especially in role-playing games, are just from false expectations. When I said that my character was going to do this, I expected this to happen. And now this other thing is happening, and I don't feel like I have a grasp on the situation anymore.
Right.
And that's causing some confusion for me. Okay. Now I understand, because all I thought you were just getting pissed that I told you took 47 points of damage.
Right.
I didn't realize it was because you expected your athletics roll to do this for you and not that for you,
Right. And I think a lot of times in systems, you will get situations where it's something that's not black and white. It's not just a roll versus a roll. It's a spell.
Yeah.
Or it's it's something that's a little gray. Like charm.
Like a charm person, yeah.
Or
like
or mind affecting spells or a situational effect. And I think in those cases, let's resolve it and move on and come back to it later.
Right.
But I think you're onto that. So
yeah.
All right. Now we only got about 10, 12 minutes left, and
there's one last point I wanted to make.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which one did you want to do?
The very last bullet point on our list.
Oh, that is true.
And it's a big one.
It is. I didn't even notice how bold it was.
So we go through all these rules.
We do.
All this etiquette. All these. Okay. You all right over there?
Okay.
And there's one last thing that we'll say. Like I'm fond of saying, I told you all that so I could directly contradict myself.
Yep.
This is a game.
Yeah.
These are all games.
Yeah.
And we're here to have fun.
We're trying to.
So as much as we have rules of etiquette of how you're supposed to act, how you're not supposed to act, do this, don't do that, be respectful of this, be respectful of that, blah, 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 blah. Look, it's a game.
If you're not having fun.
If you're not having fun, something's going wrong there. And, if it's coming down to, well, we're creating rules so that you can only have exactly 3 minutes of table chatter, you're going too far.
Yeah.
You're going way too far there.
It's more of a guideline.
Yeah, they're more guidelines. so just keep that all in mind. We're all friends at this table, and just have fun with it. Just try to be respectful.
Right.
Golden rule sort of stuff.
Okay. I'm going to get the questions because I just want to make sure we actually covered these. I think we did a lot of these.
I think we're good. Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of bounce through these a little bit because there's two distinctly that we didn't that are good questions.
Good.
Okay. So the Mad Elf asked, how do you set and reinforce ground rules at the table? In your experience, what are some common necessary ground rules to have regarding table etiquette? I think we kind of covered that.
I think so. Yeah.
If we didn't, please let us know.
God, we just spent 50 minutes discussing it. So if that didn't do it, I don't know what will.
And then Technology asked, what are your feelings on chatter, table, crosstalk, even out of game gags? I think once you step to out of game gags, I honestly think that kind of stuff starts detracting from the game. I think from crosstalk, if you're talking in a meta sense, some games support it. Like Matt pointed out that mouse guards is about making sure that it's a group effort, be in the meta as well. Like, are you sure your character wants to do that? And kind of supporting the role play. Side of it.
Yeah, definitely. And in my game, I encourage table talk and crosstalk.
Right.
Because I want everybody to feel accomplished and epic and be able to do the things that they want at the table.
Right.
And if that takes some input from other players at the table saying, hey, remember you've got this ability, or hey, there was that one NPC we talked to 3 game sessions ago. Do you remember? Oh no, I didn't remember.
Right.
But now that you reminded me, I think that's all good. I encourage that because I want my players to accomplish their goals. We only play once a month, and I don't want this campaign to have to run for the next 17 years to get to the end of my story.
Right.
On the other hand, when you start getting into table chatter, that's when it's like, okay, make your joke, but then let's get back to game.
Yeah, don't pull up a YouTube video of it.
Yeah, we all love to have out of character. We all do it. I do it plenty.
I've done it.
Where you make just some out-of-character quip, some pop culture reference. Everybody has a good laugh, but let's get back to game.
Yeah, exactly. So there were 2 questions, both from the Mad Elf that are outside of this discussion, but I think they're fantastic questions. How do you decide to end a campaign? One-shots are usually pretty obvious. Limited run, set number of sessions, it may be clear. However, expectations can change. The big question is about open-ended, ongoing campaigns. And then how do you decide to move from a one-shot, limited run to an ongoing game? Honestly, for me, after all these years, I would say it comes down to, as a storyteller, if that's all the story you want to tell, then you're done. I mean, I have watched a number of really well-constructed TV shows that are literally a story. And they stop at the end of their story and move on from there.
Yep.
And it's beautiful, and you can go back to it, and you can enjoy it. And I think D&D or any of the systems allow you to tell that story, and there might be more story to tell, but you don't want to tell that story. You want to leave that gray as it can be.
Sure.
And not move on. On the other hand, if your players are begging for story number 2, Electric Boogaloo, I mean, that's really up to you as a storyteller. You might even say, like, here's my hat. Who wants to tell the next chapter of the story?
Absolutely.
And that's a huge thing. A lot of players will be like, ooh, I don't know if I'm comfortable moving into your story.
Then don't move into my story. Tell your own.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Exactly.
I just told one. Go. Let's play something else.
Exactly.
Plus, us as storytellers, sometimes we like to be players for a little bit and relax.
Yeah, I don't think as a storyteller you are bound by your players demanding more games.
No.
But nor do I think as a player, if you're like, hey, this is a great one shot, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking to keep the story going, you can be like, well, I enjoyed it. Thank you. I'm bowing out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your choice as well. Sometimes characters are just done. You know, that was a fun character for that one shot, but I'm not gonna play this for more than a couple days.
I think I've only ever like finished one campaign. No. I've done a couple.
Yeah.
But the last one, probably the most memorable one, I ended it on a TPK, total party kill.
Oh wow, that's great.
And it was the most epic thing in the world because they accomplished their goal. The rest of the party sacrificed themselves to make sure that one character could get with the MacGuffin into the place that they needed to deposit the MacGuffin.
Okay, nice.
To win the mission.
Win the thing, yeah.
And basically they all had like a magical link to each other where they could sense each other's life force.
Right.
And so the person holding the MacGuffin was alone in this temple, basically putting it where it needed to be, and could feel the other life forces winking out as the temple guardian was killing them.
Oh wow. Nice.
And just decided like, okay, well, there's no going back from here. I'm going to sacrifice myself to put the MacGuffin where it needed to be.
Right.
And it was great. It was the most powerful ending to a campaign I think I've had yet.
I like those kind of moments. I think a lot as a storyteller, it can get challenging to create those moments because it's up to the players. So sometimes you'll end a campaign on a great note like that, and sometimes you'll just be like, "That's it, that was the end." I mean, we talked about at dinner about Matt Mercer's game, where everyone's just like, "How could that be the end?" It was like 5 turns or 3 turns, and it's over. And the answer is, you played for 40 sessions,
right.
like at 4 to 6 hours a session.
You beat the big bad guy because you spent 40 sessions planning how to beat the bad guy.
Yeah.
And getting alliances with other kingdoms and armies and the most powerful magical items in the land.
Yeah.
All under your sway.
You did it right.
Yeah.
It's not like you walked in there as a 2nd level character against a 60th level character and whooped his butt over the course of 19 rounds, whittling him down and almost dying 3 times.
Yep, that wasn't anticlimactic. That was 40 episodes of build-up.
Exactly. So don't be discouraged as a storyteller that you have to do better ending, and push the game or do something like that.
Sure.
If it's the end of the story.
Yep, absolutely.
So next week you're gone.
Next week I am going to be on vacation way, way, way up north.
Yeah, you're not going to be near Mike.
No, I'm barely going to be near internet.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So you're going to get a surprise episode from me, audience.
I'm excited. I'm actually legitimately excited to see what
because you won't know what happened in the booth.
I'm gonna
until like you get back.
Left for an hour unsupervised.
Are you going to try and find internet and download it by the time it becomes available?
I may just listen live. Yeah, I may just listen live on the Podcast Detroit.
Sit here, wing it off of some cell tower in the middle of nowhere.
Well, no, it's off the internet at that point.
That's true.
And I will have an internet connection.
Oh,
so
all right.
It's, we're going camping up at my mother-in-law's place.
Okay.
And so we're gonna have D&D Beyond there, and we're gonna run a one-shot.
Oh, that's right. You're gonna be running that one shot.
Yeah,
okay.
I've got an 11th level.
Are you running?
No. Sean is.
Okay.
I've got an 11th level Aasimar bard, lore bard.
Okay.
That I spent all of her lore things on picking up druid spells.
Oh Lord.
So
that's be fun.
It's a whole character concept I got, but
that's fantastic. Did you go with a halfling luck?
No.
Is it halfling luck?
Believe it or not, that was actually the build that I ran last time. The halfling divination wizard.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually the one that I ran last year when we did this.
Nice.
So.
All right. Well, we're getting our 2-minute warning,
yeah.
Which means we have to start our final wind here. So I'm gonna say I think we hit everything we needed to today. If you feel that we've missed anything, especially etiquette-wise, please go on our Discord, share your thoughts on this discussion, give us some additional
Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. We would love to have some comments come through on the Twitter side as well. And of course, Sarah's going to list ridiculous photos from Instagram, I'm sure, of her adventure up north. I doubt it seriously. We're notorious about our Instagram, seriously. But actually, what I'm going to ask for next week, because one of the things I've wanted to do on Instagram was the game shelf. Send us shots of your game shelf and we will compare like what kind of bookcase do you have? What's on the top corner of your bookcase?
I would say probably even I want to open that up, just your gaming space in general. Like if you've got pictures of your gaming group, if you've got pictures of miniatures,
safe for work, please.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you got pictures of your gaming group together, if you've got miniatures, something like that,
share them with us.
To us, we'd love to see them.
Yeah. So you can find us on Twitter at @st_conclave. Instagram is @st_conclave, where you'll be seeing those kind of things. And our Discord link, which is always found in our Twitter, will have our episode information, and we'll get our links up before Sarah takes off. If not, I will try and squeeze them up there.
You can also find the Discord link in all of our podcast descriptions too.
Yeah.
So they're up in our show notes on Google Play Music and whatnot.
Thank you to our Patreons, especially both Eric and Ilya May. We appreciate your contributions you've given to us. Anyone else, feel free to go on to Patreon and give us, and look forward to a couple new contribution ideas that we're going to be coming up with soon.
Absolutely. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Gooey Frog. The outro music, which you're hearing now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Mid-Air Machine. You can find both of these tracks and so many more on freemusicarchive.org.
We are at Podcast Detroit right now recording, and they are at Podcast Detroit. Our engineer is Kate. We'd like to thank our families as well, both Vicky and Sean, and all of our friends we game with.
Thank you, everybody. We love you.
Good night. Have a wonderful night.